Hey guys, it's Alexandra from EyeLoveKnots.com. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make my Taryn throw pillow. My Taryn series features the Tunisian Simple Stitch. This is an easy, beginner-friendly project. I like to make my throw pillows envelope style so that I can easily store the pillowcases and change it out depending on the time of year or how I'm feeling. So for this throw pillow, we're going to be making 3 pieces. We're going to have front and then a smaller panel in the back and a larger panel in the back. Then we'll crochet all 3 pieces together and it'll be ready to go. If you don't want to make an envelope style pillow, you could make 2 fronts and then just seam it together and either put a pillow form in it before you finish seaming or stuff it with stuffing. For my pillow, I'm using Red Heart Super Saver. This is a worsted weight acrylic yarn. This colorway is called Aran Fleck. It's a really pretty cream color with flecks of brown and gray and black. And I picked it because I wanted like a cozy fall vibe. I'm also going to be using a J10 6mm Tunisian crochet hook. With the cord, I got this one as part of a interchangeable set at Michael's. So this unscrews here and then you can change out the cord. You're also going to want to have a soft tape measure because you're going to need to take gauge. If you're going to be using a pillow form for this, gauge is essential so that the panels will all come out to the correct size. If you're going to make 2 fronts and stuff it with stuffing, gauge is not essential, but for using a pillow form, you need to have the correct size panels. So I'm going to show you how to take gauge. I'm going to be providing instructions to make 8 different sizes. I'm going to show the stitch tutorial here and how to add the border. Then I'm going to provide charts that will tell you how many chains you're going to need and how many rows you're going to need depending on the size that you want to work. Once we get our panels worked up, we'll weave in our ends together. I'll show you how to crochet the panels together and then your pillow will be good to go. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to work a small sample up since my square is finished, so I'm going to just unscrew this and take my cord off so it's easier for me to work the stitches on camera here. By nature, this stitch pattern curls, so if I let this stay here, it would curl up. That's just the nature of the stitch pattern. You can ease it a little bit by going up hook sizes. You want to use a hook size larger than what you normally would when you're crocheting. So when I'm just normally crocheting, I use an H8 5mm crochet hook with my Red Heart Super Saver. Here in Tunisian Crochet, I'm going to use a J10 6mm, so that's up 2 hook sizes. Even that though is still not going to prevent the curling. It is still going to be there somewhat, so you can block it to get rid of that. It will also smooth out with the weight of the seams and the project. Let's talk about gauge. You're going to need a soft tape measure. When we measure gauge here, I am going to lay the edge of my soft tape measure up against one of the vertical bars right on the right side of it where it would begin or end right there. Then I'm going to measure over 16 stitches, and each stitch is going to measure from right here to the right of the vertical bar all the way up to the same place of the next vertical bar. That's going to be 1 stitch. So you're going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way until you get to 16. And when you have 16 stitches across, it's going to equal 4 1/8 inches wide. If you're measuring larger than this, you'll want to switch to a smaller crochet hook and rework the same sample. If you're measuring smaller than this, then you'll want to switch to a larger crochet hook and work the same sample. So rather than working the entire square up or even the full width of it, I recommend just working a sample of maybe 25 stitches by about 20 stitches tall. You can take your gauge there for the width. 16 stitches wide equals 4 1/8 inches. 14 rows tall is going to measure 4.5 inches tall. This gauge is taken immediately. You work the sample, you take your measurements. This yarn, after resting, will scrunch up. It will shrink in size. What I normally do is I work my sample and then I leave it on my table overnight. I go work on other projects or other things around the house or whatever I have to do. The next day I will come back to it and I will take my gauge again. After resting, I find that the height of this pattern will shrink. 14 rows did measure 4.5 inches tall. Now it's going to measure 4.25 inches tall. Doesn't seem like that big of a difference, but in the grand scheme of things, when you think of 14 times however many rows you're working for your project, that's 1/4 of an inch smaller for every 14 rows. So just take that into consideration. Each yarn is a little bit different, and each stitch pattern is a little bit different. So this is worked with Red Heart Super Saver in the Tunisian Simple Stitch. So if you're looking at my written pattern, that's what it means immediately and after resting. I'm going to start with a slip knot. So I brought the yarn over my fingers here, wrap it around my index finger 2 times, hold the tension with my middle finger and my thumb, pull the loop on the left up over the other one but not off my finger. Then I'll pull the loop that's on the left now up over the other one and off my finger. Insert my crochet hook where the loop that's on my finger is, pull it off. I'll hold the working yarn in my right hand and the short tail end in my left. I'm going to just tighten it to normal tension. Before I begin here with the chain, the stitch multiple for this stitch pattern is really simple. There is none. So any number of stitches works. If you work 10 chains, you're going to have 10 stitches, and you just work evenly amongst those 10 stitches. There is no set stitch multiple for this, so it makes it even more versatile because you can get it even closer to the width that you're looking for, simply by just working one more or one less stitch at a time. So when it comes to gauge, if you need to adjust your stitches, you can do it just by adding or taking away one chain at a time, which will be equal to 1 stitch. My original square was worked in the 14-inch size for my throw pillow, but I'm going to work a sample up in the 4-inch Afghan square size. For that size, I'm going to start with a chain 13. I'll put up a chart now showing how many chains you should have depending on what size you want to make. Alright, to chain, we're going to yarn over our hook and pull through the loop. Yarn over, pull through the loop on our hook. Yarn over, pull through the loop on our hook. I have 3 chains here. I'm going to go ahead and work a total of 13, but you work however many you need for your size. Alright, I have my 13 chains worked here. The foundation of this row is going to be worked into the back bump of these chains. So looking right now, you see the V shape, that is the front of the chain. We just want to rotate it so that we're looking at the back and the back bump right there in the center. The loop that's on our hook is going to count as our first stitch, and that first bump that's right there we're going to skip. The second bump is where we're going to start working into. We're going to take our crochet hook, insert it right underneath, picking up that loop on our hook. So when you do that, you're going to insert right in the center of the chain, leaving the V shape on the bottom and picking up just the top back bump on your hook. Then yarn over, pull through, and you have 2 loops on your hook. We'll do the same thing all the way down, so insert into the next stitch, picking up just the back bump on your hook. Yarn over, pull through, we have 3 loops on our hook. Insert your hook into the next stitch, picking up just the back bump on your hook. Yarn over, pull through, we have 4 loops on our hook. Continue working down the row. And now we have the same number of loops on our hook as chains that we started with. For my sample here, I have 13 loops on my hook. And it's going to continue being 13 stitches all the way up. So take time to count if you need to. Make sure that you haven't lost any stitches along the way. This is the forward pass of the first row. We work into the back bump so that it gives us a cleaner finished edge. You can also work into the front of the chains directly into the center if that's what you prefer. But I really like how this gives you the V-shaped stitches on the bottom, which will match the top once we get there. To work the return pass is going to be the same for each of the remaining rows. We're going to start by yarning over and pulling through the first loop only. This counts as a chain 1 for the row. Then you'll probably have to scrunch up your stitches to get them closer to the end so it's easier to work through. We only do this chain 1 in the beginning. For the rest of them, we're going to yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, leaving the rest on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, leaving the rest on our hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, leaving the rest on the hook. Continue all the way down, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only. And now we've completed row 1. For the remaining rows, we're going to work into the front vertical bar of the stitches. We do not start with a chain 1 here. We only start with a chain 1 on the other side when we work our return pass. So we're about to work a forward pass for row 2. The loop that's on our hook is going to count as our first stitch, so we're not going to work into the first stitch below it. To begin the next stitch, we're going to find the vertical bar. And if you look closer at your stitch, you'll see that it kind of looks like the V-shaped stitch there, with the V-shaped stitch coming out of the center. But you can see a back leg there and a front leg. That front leg is the vertical bar that we want to work into. So we're going to insert our hook directly into the center, picking up just that top vertical bar, only 1 loop on our hook. Yarn over, pull through, and we have 2 loops on our hook. Find the vertical bar of the next stitch, insert your hook right into the center, picking up just that top loop on your hook. Yarn over, pull through that loop, and now we have 3 loops on our hook. Find the vertical bar of the next stitch, insert right into the center, and when I say into the center, I mean we're leaving that back leg there. We're working into the center, picking up just that top front leg, that top vertical bar. Yarn over, pull through, we have 4 loops on our hook. We're going to continue picking up just the top front vertical bar on our hook, yarn over and pull through, and we'll have the same number of loops on our hook as we've had previously. That's my second to last stitch of the row. For the last stitch, instead of picking up a vertical bar, I'm going to work into the entire stitch. So I'm going to find the edge, and I'm going to insert my hook through. It's going to pick up 2 loops there. That's a V-shaped stitch there. We want to pick up both of those loops on our hook. Then yarn over and pull through both as well. This is going to help form a edging there that looks like the V-shaped stitches from the chain below. That's going to be a lot easier to work our border into as well. And right now our forward pass for row 2 is complete. Now we need to work a return pass. So we're going to start by yarning over and pulling through 1 loop only. That's our chain 1, and we only do it on the return. And I'll scrunch up my stitches so they're closer to the edge. And I work it just as I did before. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, leaving the rest on my hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, leaving the rest on my hook. And I'm going to continue all the way down the row. And now row 2 is complete. You can already see the stitches forming there. They look like sideways V-shaped stitches, and then the vertical bars are lining up. All the remaining rows are going to be worked exactly the same as row 2. So let's work one more row together. The loop on our hook counts as our first stitch, so we don't work into this vertical bar. As you can see here though, you are forming a V-shaped stitch on the side, which is going to match what we're creating on the edge and what we started with. My next stitch of the row is going to be worked into the top front vertical bar there. So I'm inserting into the center, picking up just that top loop only of the vertical bar, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through. I have 2 loops on my hook. Insert my hook into the center of the next stitch, picking up just the top vertical bar on my hook. Yarn over, pull through. I have 3 loops on my hook. Insert my hook into the center of the next stitch, picking up just the top vertical bar. Yarn over, pull through. 4 loops on my hook. And I'll continue working my forward pass all the way down until I get to the last stitch. And now that I'm here at the last stitch, instead of working into the vertical bar, I'm going to insert into the side edge, picking up 2 loops on my hook, that V-shaped stitch there, yarn over and pull through. The forward pass is done and I'm ready to return. I'm going to start by chaining 1, so yarn over, pull through 1 loop only, then scrunch up my stitches, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, and continue all the way down, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only. And there we are, row 3 finished. The rest of your rows are going to be worked exactly the same. To count the number of rows here, you can look to the vertical bars that are right there in between the sideways V shape. 1, 2, 3 vertical bars, that's equal to 3 rows. I'm going to put up a chart showing how many rows you should have worked depending on the size that you want. And then I'll be back to show you how to finish off and work the border. I've added just a couple more rows here. Now I'm ready to finish off. Basically, for the finish, we're going to work slip stitches across. The loop on our hook is going to count as our first stitch. I'm going to insert into the top front vertical bar as normal. Then I'll yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on my hook. Insert into the next top front vertical bar. Yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on my hook. Insert my hook into the next vertical bar, yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on my hook. And I'll continue working across the row. Just one more stitch left here and I'm going to insert into the whole entire stitch as I have been doing, picking up both loops there. Then yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on my hook. And that finishes off the finish. You want to try to work these slip stitches as loose as possible so that when you work your border, you don't struggle as much to work into them. But this finish right here mimics the look of the stitches from your foundation, as well as on your right side and on your left side. My left side is a little bit tighter, but you have even stitching all the way around, and that's going to make it really easy to add a border. For the border, I'm going to work in single crochet. To single crochet, we insert a hook into the stitch, picking up both loops from that V shape, yarn over, pull through the stitch. We have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert your hook into the next stitch, picking up both loops of that V shape, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And continue single crocheting down the side. Here I've worked my very last stitch of the row. I'm going to chain 3 for my corner. Then I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch, which is along the bottom now. When I insert into that, I'm going to put the beginning tail end over my crochet hook so I can crochet over it and complete a single crochet. I'm going to continue working over my tail there for 2 more stitches, so I'll single crochet into the next stitch over the tail, and 1 more here with the tail over my crochet hook. That's going to count as the first pass of my weaving, and now I'm going to drop it and I'll finish weaving it in a few. I'm going to pull up a loop here just so I don't lose it, and my corner is going to have this chain space here. I like the shaping of this chain space. If you want something a little bit more rounded, you can work less chains here. I'm going to continue on single crochet into each stitch here all the way to the end of the row. That's my last stitch for the row. I'm going to chain 3 for my next corner. Then I'll single crochet into the next stitch, which is on the side, and continue single crocheting up the side. That's my last stitch there. I'm going to chain 3 for the next corner. Then I'll single crochet into the next stitch along the top. And these are all the slip stitches, so they might be a little bit tough to work into, but I'm going to continue single crocheting into each stitch there along the top. There's my last stitch of the top. I'm just going to work a chain 2 here and slip stitch join to the very first single crochet, insert my hook under both loops of that first single crochet, yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on my hook. And we chain 2 here because that slip stitch adds a little bit of length here. And I'm going to pull up a loop here so I don't lose it. And there is the first round of our border finished. For my throw pillow, I am only working 1 round of the border, so this is where that stops. But this basis is going to make it a lot easier when it comes to assembling the pieces of the pillow. Here's where I worked the last slip stitch of the border. I have already fastened off my yarn. I'm just going to pull up on this loop to break it. Then I'll insert from the wrong side to the right side into the same stitch I slip stitched to, yarn over, and pull that tail end to the back. Now it's going to be easier to weave in. Right here is where I had my initial tail end and I worked over several stitches. I've already threaded my tapestry needle. My magic number is 3. I feel the most comfortable after 3 passes when I weave in my ends. You can do whatever is most comfortable for you. So by crocheting over several stitches here, that's going to count as my first pass. So I'm only going to work 2 more here. I always work the same way when I enter and exit the stitches. Instead of picking up the whole entire stitch, I insert my needle into the center of the stitch, breaking it in half. Then I'll work back through several stitches here, and when I exit, I'm going to break a stitch in half as well. This is going to help capture my yarn better. And before I continue with my passes, I just use my fingers to manipulate the fabric so that it doesn't bunch up. Then I'll enter into a nearby stitch here, breaking it in half, work through several of the same stitches, and upon exit, break my stitch in half as well. That's going to make 3 passes here, use my fingers to manipulate the fabric, and I'm ready to fasten that off. Here at the top, where I finished my border, I'm going to do the same exact thing. And I'm going to work it into the bulkiness of the border there. And now my square is complete. Ignore the curl, because as soon as I assemble my pieces to make my throw pillow, that curl is going to go away. Now we need to make the back panels. There's going to be a smaller bottom panel. I recommend that you make that first. Then there will be a larger top panel. I recommend you make that second, and after you finish making that and do the border around it, don't fasten off your yarn, because then you can use that to go right into the assembly. From that front panel, you can chain 1, pull up a big loop so you don't lose it, weave in the initial tail end, and then that's going to be the first panel that you'll put down on the back to go with the front panel. So go ahead and work up your 2 back panels. The width is going to be exactly the same as this front panel, so you'll start with the same number of chains and work the same number of stitches. I'll put up a chart for each one showing how many chains you should have and how many rows you should work, depending on the size that you're working. After you work up the square, you'll work the border the same way as we did here on the front side, and then fasten off and weave in ends. If you need a refresher on any of those things, you can drop down into the description box below, click on the timestamp for it, and it will jump you back in the video. When you're ready for assembly, the idea is the larger back panel on the top with the right side or pretty side facing down and the wrong side facing us. Then you take the smaller back panel, overlap it here in the middle about 3 inches, and then the front panel goes on top of that. And that's how it's going to be assembled. So I'm going to pull out the bottom layer for now, so I don't need that one to start with. I'm going to start with the top layer. And if you fastened off your yarn like I did, then you're going to attach your yarn into any stitch, doesn't matter which one. If you left that loop from your back top panel, then you can just insert your hook back in, pull down the loop to normal tension, and bring it to this front side to get started. So for mine, I'm going to go to the top right corner and insert into that next single crochet that's there. And I took the cord off my hook because I'm going to be working regular single crochets here. So the first thing I'm going to do is insert my hook into that single crochet from the top layer. Then I'm going to insert my hook into the same stitch from the back layer. So here's my top right chain space. I inserted my hook into the stitch to the left. That's on the top layer. On the bottom layer, I have the corner chain space, and I inserted my hook into the stitch to the left. So that's working through both layers. Grab my yarn, pull it through, and then tie a basic knot. So just one time here. Then I'll insert my hook back into those stitches, yarn over and pull through, and then chain one. And now I'm ready to start. There are so many ways you can tie in your yarn here, so if you prefer a different method, go ahead and do that. As I work around, I'm going to continue to work through both layers, and when we're in the middle part here, where the overlap is, we'll be working through 3 layers. We're going to single crochet all the way around, increasing in the corners. So into this very first stitch that I attached my yarn, I'm going to insert my hook back into that top layer, and into the corresponding stitch from the bottom layer, and then yarn over and pull through and complete my single crochet. Insert my hook into the next stitch from the top layer, then the corresponding stitch from the back layer, so I have both layers on my hook, then complete a single crochet. Insert my hook into the next stitch on the top layer, then the corresponding stitch from the back layer, and complete a single crochet. And continue working all the way down. I like to just line my stitches up so I can work through both layers in one swoop. Just make sure to work evenly as you go around, lining up your stitches so that the panels will line up. And continue working across until you get to the next corner chain space. Now that I've reached the corner, I'm going to work 3 stitches into this corner chain space. I'm actually going to do single crochet, half double crochet, single crochet, just so that it gives me a little bit of extra height on that second stitch there. So I'm going to insert my hook into the corner chain space on both panels and single crochet. Then I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the same chain space, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, then single crochet back into that same chain space. And it's still a rounded corner, but it just gives me a little bit extra height there. Now we've reached the side. I'm going to start by single crocheting through both layers until I get close to the middle. The overlap of the top layer and the bottom layer from the back is going to be about 3 inches. So once I get closer to the middle here, 3 inches or so are going to overlap with the bottom layer. So I'm going to need to take a break, line up the bottom layer, and then work through 3 layers there. going to go ahead and line up the bottom layer. So the top panel here, I'm going to find the chain space, and I'm going to line that up with the chain space of the bottom layer. And the bottom layer, you want to have the wrong side facing you. That way the pretty side, the front side, is facing down. Then I'll grab some stitch markers, or you could use a safety pin or scrap yarn, and I'm going to place it into that first single crochet to the right of the chain space and the corresponding stitch on the back layer. Then I will line my stitches up here. And I worked too many on the top layer, so I'm going to pull a couple out. This next stitch here is the single crochet next to the chain space of that other layer. So I'm going to line that single crochet up here. The next stitch here is the chain space. I'm going to line it up with the next stitch as normal. And I'm going to place my stitch marker through both of those. Alright, let me insert my hook back in here. I have one more stitch here just to work through 2 layers. And my stitch marker's in the next one, so I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch and into the corner chain space from that other layer that I added in there. And then I'm going to pull over the top back layer and insert into the next corresponding stitch. So I have 3 layers on my hook right now. Then I'll yarn over and complete a single crochet. Then I can take this stitch marker out. And now as I continue to work here in the middle, I'm going to work through the top layer, through the back bottom layer, and then through the back top layer, and single crochet. So you're just working into the next stitch on each layer, working through 3 layers here in the middle. And I'm going to work across until I get to the corner chain space of this top back layer. The next stitch on this top back layer is going to be the chain space. So I'm inserting into the top layer, into the middle layer, and then into the chain space, and completing my single crochet. Now I'm done working into that top layer, and I'm going to go back to working through 2 layers, and that's going to be through the front panel and then from the back bottom panel. Lining up the stitches as normal, single crocheting across until I get to the corner chain space. And my next stitch here is the corner chain space. I'm going to work it the same way as I did before. Insert my hook into that chain space and corresponding chain space. single crochet, then half double crochet into the same chain space. We're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that chain space, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and then single crochet back in there. And if you've done something different on the other corner, then just make sure to copy that here. Then we're going to rotate and work into the next space on the top panel, and then the corresponding stitch on the back panel. And single crochet all the way across, working through both layers until we get to the other corner chain space. There's the last stitch. The next one is going to be my chain space of the corner, and I'm going to single crochet, half double crochet, single crochet into that corner chain space. I'm going to pull up a loop here. We're going to rotate. We have just one more side left to work. I'm going to go ahead and line my stitches up here before I get started so that I know where the overlap is going to be. We're working backwards here, so right now we're going to continue working through the front layer and the back bottom layer. So I'm going to line up until I get to the corner chain space. Here I'm placing my marker to the stitch that's just to the right of the corner chain space of that back bottom layer. Through both layers. Then I'm going to come from the top and line my stitches up until I get to this point. So the next stitch here is just to the left of where I put my first marker. I am going to put it through the top layer, through the chain space of that back bottom layer, and then through the corresponding stitch here on the back top layer. And I'm going to take out the first marker I put. I'm going to line up the stitches until I get to the next corner chain space down here of the top back layer. Then I'm placing my marker through all 3 layers there, And now I know that I'm going to work through the 2 layers here up until I get to that pink marker. Then I'm going to be working through 3 layers. That's going to be the top layer, the corresponding stitch from the middle layer, which is the bottom back layer, and then the corner chain space from the top back layer. All 3 layers all the way up until I get to the next stitch marker here. And then I'll finish out working through 2 layers all the way up to the beginning. And you'll just want to check from the wrong side after you get some of your stitches worked here that the layers are lining up, because if they're not, when you put your pillow form in there, you're going to see a diagonal line here with your back layers. So you'll want to make sure that the whole line is lining up to where you started on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and work this side off camera until I get back to the beginning. Rotate this just a little bit. And now I'm going to slip stitch join to that very first single crochet that I started with. Insert my hook under both loops of that V shape. Then yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on my hook. And that's going to complete my round. Now I can fasten off, leaving a tail end long enough to comfortably weave in. Pull up on this loop to break it. Insert my hook from the wrong side to the right side through the stitch I just slip stitched to. Yarn over and pull through so that tail end is now on the back with the other one. And I have just 2 ends left to weave in. I'll go ahead and thread this into my tapestry needle. I'm going to weave both of them in the same way as I did before, and then this will be ready to use. Alright, so you may be saying, I thought you said this curl was going to go away when we assemble it. Once you put your pillow form in there, pull your back panel up and smooth it out, pull your top panel down and smooth it out, and this will lay flat. There'll be a small lip right here, but the piece itself is going to lay flat. I'll pop my pillow form in here and show you, and if you still want to add a little bit of extra weight or security here, I'll go ahead and share some ways that you could do that too. Alright, so I have my pillow form inside my pillowcase, and all I did was pull the bottom panel up and smooth it out with my fingers, and then pull the top panel down and smooth it out with my fingers. And as you can see, that curl, it's a little bit of a lip here, but the curl is gone. Now, I always leave my pillowcases just like this, but you can add another row of single crochet here and create a loop or a buttonhole, and then add a button and secure that there with a button. Or you could do a snap button, so one side on here and the other side on the top. Or if you want a little bit of extra weight here for your end so it doesn't have that lip, you can add another row or 2 of single crochet. And you don't even need to take your pillow apart to do that. You can just attach it here in the chain space on the right side from the wrong side so it follows the same pattern. Work all the way across to the chain space of the other side, and then chain 1, turn, and work back across the same way. And that's going to add a little bit of extra height to your top panel and some weight to the end of it. Or you can block your finished piece. Now, as I mentioned, I'm really happy with the way that mine turned out. I'm not going to add anything to it. And I can't wait to go ahead and put it onto my couch and start using it right away. Guys, thanks so much for watching my video. You'll find the written pattern for this linked in the description box below. Please smash that like button and hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.